Well, good evening, MSAD75. Thank you all for coming to our budget meeting tonight. We have some fun guests here to join us. And then we're going to see the superintendent's presentation. So unless Evan or Heidi, you have any other introductory comments to make, we can open it up to the Region 10 fiscal year 2027 budget proposal.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for inviting Region 10 tonight. My name is Sean Shabbat. I'm the director. To my right is Doug Dumont. Some of you know him. Our assistant director, and Sybil Brewer is behind us, our business manager. So thank you again for having us. We have 6 slides that we'd like to share with you tonight, but the first is a graph of our enrollment over the 4 school years, including this school year. And you can see the growth that Region 10 has had over these 4 academic school years. So we've been about 285 the first year, and then just about 300. And then last year we were just over 350. And this year we were at right around 402, 403. So you can see those percentages year over year, and then year back to the first year, 22, 23. That gives you those percentages. Next slide, please. Here is MSAD75, or Mount Ararat high school students, and their increase in that enrollment. So we share that with all of our sending boards, just so you have that perspective of the increase, the number of students from Mount Ararat that are accessing Region 10 in career and technical education. So share that with you as a context a little bit. Our budget is a little higher than we would have liked and shoot for. We're coming in at the local share, as you can see, is 8.6%. And I'll get to the next part without the loan, and we'll talk about the loan in a minute. But our operating budget overall is an increase of 10.57%. And then we had an increase in state and revenues of 11.34%. And that comes out to a local share increase of 8.6%. Originally, we wanted to have increase our EMT program, which is currently a half-time program, to a full-time program. But we decided to, and then we also needed some additional ed techs. But we just couldn't sustain that much of a cost increase. So we cut that back and left it at half an EMT and reduced the ed techs to what we had this year. And then we were able to adjust a vacancy when we hired a new person. And then we made some additional subtractions as well of we're removing the portable this summer, some tuition, teacher PD, and some other areas on the budget line that doesn't directly impact students. So that got us down to 8.6, because originally we were a little north of 15%. And we thought that that wouldn't be acceptable to anybody. Next slide, please. We did apply and were approved by the state of Maine for another revolving renovation fund. Region 10 is, as you may know, was built in 1983. We replaced the front entrance bridge with this fund 2 years ago. We applied for a couple things. We need a new desk collection system for our shops. The one that we have hasn't been working since I've been there, so for over 4 years. And we have concerns about air quality with all that dust, especially in the winter months when the kids are all working inside. So we put that in for the loan. Our elevator is in need of some repairs. Obviously, that needs to be fixed. The rear entrance, which is our handicapped accessible entrance, does not have a push button to allow folks that need to access that. And then also our fire alarm panel needs some upgrades. So the only two, and one more thing, when we did the front entrance, in hindsight, we should have put a pass-through window when you come into Region 10 and you go into that little vestibule. There's no clear line of sight from the office to who you're buzzing in. We have a camera there, but no pass window. In hindsight, we should have added that to the bridge project, but we didn't. So the two things that were approved in the SRRF loan, this funding formula, were our fire alarm panel and that pass-through window, reconfiguring that a little bit. The application as far as the elevator and the dust collection system and the handicap accessible doors were not approved. So the loan came in at $115,000 to do that. 45.73% will be forgiven by the state of Maine. Our amount to be paid back is $62,829, and then you can see the local cost share there in green for MSAD75 is $4,500, $4,579 a year over the next 5 years. So that brings up the cost total to 9.63%. Higher than we wanted to, but that's where our school committee, our cooperative board felt was reasonable. The next is our cost drivers. Salaries, like most people, are our largest, a 10.96% increase. That is driven mostly by our instructors, who their salaries, we have a collective bargaining agreement like you folks do. We take the weighted average of our 3 sending districts. We don't directly negotiate teacher salaries. So thankfully, we don't have to work with that, but it does tie our hands to whatever you folks do in combination with your peers from Brunswick and RSU 5. So we take that. Our health insurance increase is a little over 34%. We budgeted a 12% increase, but because we have several new positions, not new, excuse me, open positions. And with open positions with a small staff, we budget for the highest amount possible, meaning full family, because if we don't do that and then we get somebody with full family, it will blow the budget. So we budget as all new vacancies will have that full family. And so that's why it's much larger than that 12% placeholder that we have built into the budget. Then you can see the loan repayment. And then we've had to increase repairs for our aging building, and student enrollment has forced us, on a positive note, to increase our supply lines, because you can't do culinary arts without buying food, or you can't do building trades and carpentry without building materials. And we all know how expensive that is. So that's why the supply lines have increased as well. And then the last page is a breakdown of our 3-year average by enrollment and per pupil cost, and the cost sharing associated with that over the last 3 years. Our goal is usually to keep it around 5 to 6% increase. This year it's a little higher with 9.6. Our board asked us for our per pupil cost, and we cautioned them not to compare that to the sending districts, because we do not have transportation, a central office, a nutrition department, a special education department. So you're not comparing apples to apples, but what it is useful is to look at our per pupil costs for Region 10 over the past 3 years. And are we maintaining, and in fact, in this budget, we are decreasing our per pupil cost. So we're having more students and educating them at a more reasonable rate. So to me, that's a positive trend, that our per pupil cost year over year is decreasing slightly. Hopefully that demonstrates that we're trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. We anticipate about 450 students. I think Mr. Dumont and I feel pretty comfortable that we'll be able to hit that this year. We are starting a new program. HVAC and plumbing, and that enrollment looks really positive. That we'll pretty much have a full program in that next year. So over the course of 5 years, we will have almost doubled the size of Region 10 than we were. So, and that's a total team effort that everyone's pulling in. And to be honest, with some great support from the sending schools. The 3 high school principals, the 3 superintendents have been nothing but supportive of Region 10 in my work with them. And so that is to benefit of our students. So I appreciate that. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have. Or Mr. Dumont, or Ms. Brewer behind us, who didn't want to sit with us.
I have a question, and this is my first rodeo with the Finance Committee, so I'm a novice, so
Ask anything.
be
you'd like.
gentle. Evan, can you go back to the slide that had the facilities work, the revolving rotating fund? Yeah. So Sean, you talked about a lot of work. There were like 4 components to it, right? The HVAC, the safety issue, the elevator, and I'm trying to remember what the 4th one was.
So what I talked about was the pass-through window.
Right. That's what I was calling the safety thing. Yep.
The elevator.
Yep.
The dust collection system.
Yep.
The fire control panel.
Yes.
And the handicapped accessibility on the lower level.
Right. And I was wrongly saying HVAC, but I meant
Okay.
the dust gathering. So the way to stick with me, so are you able to do all of those projects with the 115? Am I following your chart correctly?
We only got funding for 2.
Okay.
And that is the pass-through window
Okay.
and the fire alarm panel. The others, the elevator we have to do, so
Sure.
we're going to use our capital projects
Okay.
to fund that this coming school
And so
year.
that's not
That's
reflected in
not
this
here.
slide? Okay.
It's in our reserve account.
Yep.
And then the others, we will have to budget for future years.
Presumably out of your capital.
Exactly.
Your
That will be
capital
up to
fund
the
would
cooperative
be your
board, but
typical
yes, that's what
go-to.
Sybil and I are planning on
Okay.
doing.
Great. Thank you.
I just may correct that. Not what we're planning on doing, that's what we're planning on recommending to the board, and they will. Yes, to
Got
our
it.
board.
I understood. Thanks, Sean.
So my question is around the dust collection system. Can you run the programs that would require the use of the dust collection system without the dust collection system?
We're running them now. We have small dust collection systems that are portable.
Okay.
And that are next to the equipment within it, but they are a Band-Aid and they don't do en masse
Okay.
a very good job. So we need.
You need the system. Yep. Thank you.
I have a question, which is just a refresher for myself. How is the local share split up between the 3 sending districts?
It's based on the cooperative agreement between the 3 sending districts that formed Region 10. And that is comprised of the census data of the towns, not the student census, the census of the whole communities that make up each sending district. And proportionately, that's how that boils up.
Thank you very much, Sean.
And just as a note, just so you're aware, we use that cooperative agreement or those percentages to allocate percentages for slots for each one of our programs to be equitable.
That makes sense. Any other questions for Sean or his team? Anyone want to ask Doug some parliamentary procedural questions from his time on the board? Awesome. Well, I think you guys are done then. Thank you very much. This is a great look at your budget. This is all in line with everything we're looking at ourselves, I would say. So I really appreciate it. And all I hear about are the great things that are happening at Region 10. I was just talking to a 10th grader who's telling me all about her plans to try to get into the CNA program for her senior year. So great work over there, you guys.
Great, thank you. And we're happy to come anytime you'd like to have it.
All righty. Well, with that, we can move on to a little item called the Superintendent's Fiscal Year 2027 Budget Recommendations. Let's hear it from Heidi and Evan.
Interaction as well. Yeah, okay. It's good. Okay.
Notes while presenting or
No. It's just close that
get this out
down.
of here?
Yeah,
That at the bottom, you
Yeah.
think?
good.
Same as last time.
Huh?
I said same as last time with the arrows or whatever.
I'm gonna get rid of that thing right there. Oh, wait, yeah, I guess it's not up there anyway.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, okay. Well, hi, everyone again. Seems like I just saw you yesterday. So we're here, Evan and I, to present the superintendent's budget proposal for the 2026-27 school year. And we're really excited because this proposal reflects our responsibility to balance two important commitments. And those commitments are investing in students while maintaining fiscal responsibility for the communities that we serve. So my goal tonight is to walk you through where the district stands, what is driving this year's budget, what this proposal invests in, and how the financial impact is shared across our 4 towns. Down.
That one.
This one?
Mhm.
Oh,
Should do it.
Can you help me?
Try clicking. Oh.
There we go. Okay. So the purpose of tonight's presentation, again, it's organized around 5 key areas. First, it's district progress, the major accomplishments that we had in the 25-26 school year. Second, key trends, including enrollment, student needs, demographic shifts. And third, budget drivers, which are what is causing the district costs to increase in FY27. Fourth, strategic investments, and then what the budget funds for students. And finally, community impact and how those costs are shared across Bowdoin, Bowdenham, Harpswell, and Topsom. So first, we will talk about some major district wins. So before we talk about the budget itself, I really want to talk with you about our district progress. We've had a lot in the last year. This has been a strong year for MSAD75. We formally launched the 2025 to 2030 strategic plan, and it has clear priorities with measurable KPIs in math and elementary math. Every grade from kindergarten through grade 5 exceeded national growth projections in the 2024-25 school year. And as high school level science scores rose above the state benchmark and the percentage of students meeting expectations increased from 26.3 to 41.2%. The district-wide attendance continues to maintain strong at 94%. And then we also expanded our pre-K to add an additional 40 students in the district with 3 new pre-K classrooms, 2 of them in the general ed and 1 of them in our functional life skills classrooms. So the facility side of this, we also, if you don't remember or haven't seen, we finished up the middle school building envelope. So it has nice new windows, outside siding, doors. So these accomplishments really do matter because they show what the district is making progress and moving forward with the purpose. And then at a glance, MSAD 75 has 2,295 students across 7 schools. We have 5 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school. Again, our attendance rate is 94.4%, and our graduation rate was 92.59% last year. And by 2028, as part of our strategic plan, we are hoping to get that up by another 5%. And again, we share all of this with our 4 communities. Budget throughout this process has been aligned to our strategic plan. As you know, we finished that. And before we take a look at the budget pressures, it's really important to remember that this proposal is grounded in our district strategic plan. Everything we talked about that has gone into this budget really aligns to goals and KPIs and strategies within that plan. It's tied to one of our 4 long-term priorities, which are these 4: education, health, well-being, talent management, and community engagement. So you'll notice here that we've had a steady decline from 2,407 students back in 2021. Now we are up to 2,000. 279 in 2025. And then also in 2026, we have moved up to 2,295. So while the rate was declining slowly before 2026, it's really supporting a general trend upward. Student needs continue to increase. And while enrollment has begun to stabilize, enrollment numbers alone don't tell the story. And so the complexity of student needs continues to rise and remains a primary driver of the budget growth. So approximately 25% of our special ed population in the district is a little bit above the state average at 20.4%, reflecting a high needs population. And then early childhood success. We were able to meet the districts in the 3 to 4-year-old range, 100% of FAPE offer, meaning that we offered services for students in the district were in the 3 to 4-year-old range. Some took advantage of it and some did not. But we must not only respond to enrollment, we need to respond to the increasing student needs. Now, the last time we talked about there was a request to know what the cost per student in the district was. And let me see. Oh, yeah, it does work. Okay, good. The state average across the board is 22.5 thousand. And for MSAD 75, we are at 24.1. And you'll notice we're at the top of the chart. And what the difference is, I handed out tonight, and we'll put this on our website for those of you that are at home. I put the numbers of schools that are within each of these districts. And why this makes a difference in this budget presentation is because why is MSAD 75 so high? MSAD 75 is high because we have 7 schools in our district that we have to maintain, plus a bus garage, plus a adult education program. And what that means is that the cost per pupil increases for school districts with greater number of schools due to several factors. And those factors are related to administrative complexity, facility overhead, and the difficulty of achieving certain economies of scale. So duplication of administrative services, the more schools you have, the more services you have to provide in each of those schools. Every school has to have an administrator, every school has to have a nurse, every school has to have a certain amount of teachers. And so the resources aren't shared. Where you look down at Gorham, which you would have thought was a larger, would have had more, theirs is at 19K. They only serve 4 schools across their district. And so that makes a big difference. In Brunswick a few years ago, I guess it's been about 10 years now, they consolidated schools. And so they have less schools than we do in their district. Brunswick is actually at, they say they were at 6 schools. We're at 7, but they're at 6. So they were able to, so they're just a few $1,000s less than what we are. So I thought that was really important for you to see and to get that out there, is the cost and how it's driven. Again, whoops. So 22.5 for the state average and 24.1 for our average. Yep, and then 22.5 for the state average. Mm-hmm. And again, you can see that our enrollment trend is going up, or actually, yes, this is just a different way to look at it. Same type of information. Right, yep. Do you want to talk about that? This is over the 5-year, that's right.
Yeah, so I just pulled this data from the ESSA dashboard, which is a dashboard that the main DOE maintains. You can just type that into Google and find it, but you can look at all of the per pupil expenditures out of any district that you look at. And I just thought it was important to highlight. They only have up to 25 published so far. So I pulled the 5 years between 2021 and 2025.
Hudson.
Really quickly, so that was a chart of the cost per pupil, not enrollment, correct?
That's correct.
Great. And I just want to point out that fiscal year 25 spend was 24,076 per student. So we're relatively flat compared to that number at 24.1.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. So This is a really nice chart, although you can't see the entire thing on the screen. So the staffing reflects our students' needs because it's one of the clearest ways to understand district priorities. So you can see that special education and regular education, special ed is 24.35%, that we for staffing in our district, 13.82% for regular instruction. And then we have our academic specialists such as RTI, interventionists, we have those. Transportation, student well-being, all of our health services, those are all in there. And this is a nice way to look at how the district is spending their money, or our money, I should say. And this is where Evan's going to talk to you.
So the fiscal year 2027 financial overview, we're looking at a 6.11% increase over the prior year, driven primarily by student services, classroom needs, and rising operational costs, those costs being salary and benefits that are contractually in place. Our 2026 budget was $57,876,308, and we are looking with that 6.11% increase at $61,413,299. That reflects a $3.5 million increase, and like I said before, 6.11% increase over last year. So the MOE baseline, so we had originally presented our MOE budget at 6.88, but we took a hard look at a lot of the unfilled positions that we had in our budget, and we were able to pull that down to 5.06 as our MOE baseline. And we have some new requests from our administrators totaling just over 600,000, bringing our budget to that 61,413,299. This is a breakdown of our warrants. I wanted to include the 2025 budget, the 26, which is the current year we're in right now, the MOE budget as it was presented at the beginning of this process, and then where we are proposing right now. And then at the bottom here, you can see that new request number of 606,000, and then what that totals all together to bring us to that 6.11% increase. I don't think there's too much more on that. I'm happy to dive into any of those warrants. As the board looks through the new requests, these warrant articles will change. I wanted to group all the new requests together. So then when we decide, oh, we want to put that thing forward, I'll put it into the correct warrant article. So these proposed articles aren't set in stone just yet, but I wanted to give the opportunity to show the new requests versus what we're proposing for our budget. All right, so the slide.
Yeah, I have a question. Could you go back to that last one?
Absolutely.
Perhaps I'm missing it. The proposed,
So this column right here.
yeah. Is that not less than the column beside it? That's 27. I see. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And yeah, so for anyone looking at that, so the initial proposed total reflects the reductions from the MOE prior to the new requests. That's why there's sort of two numbers there and what that is doing.
Thanks for clarifying that. All right, so I wanted to give an illustration about how we invest in our budget for those folks who maybe like a visual rather than just a spreadsheet into a slide here. It kind of simplifies the picture, right? So more than half of every dollar, that being the 52%, goes towards regular instruction and special education. So that's directly impacting educational services. Another 11% goes to student and staff support. Facilities makes up about 10% of our budget. Facilities being custodial services, grounds and maintenance. Debt service is 9%, and that's those are our obligations that we owe through bonds or capital leases. Capital leases meaning the money we use to buy our school buses, which is split up over 3 years. Transportation represents 7% of our budget, and same with administration. And then other expenditures, some of those miscellaneous costs are calculated by about 4%. I want to talk about some of the key drivers to some of those warrant articles that we just saw. I'll start with what the drivers are for increases, then at the bottom, I'll show you some decreases that we're seeing. So regular instruction is the biggest warrant that we have within our budget. We're seeing an 8.33% increase in the largest single driver to our budget, and that's primarily due to salary and benefit increases. I'd say about 60% of our staff is included in this warrant article, so that's why you see such a big lift here. Special education continues to rise. At 25% of our students receiving special education services, we're showing through state mandated services that we're going to have to increase our budget by just over 5%. Student support and well-being, these are anything from nursing initiatives to counseling. We're seeing a 4.65% increase. Once again, this is driven by primarily salaries and benefits, but we can talk more about that later. Facilities maintenance, we are seeing just over 5% increase. We're seeing increased costs due to our utility delivery costs. We're locked in at a purchasing agreement for our utilities, where I think we're paying 12 cents per kilowatt hour that we get, where most people pay somewhere between 18 and 22. So we're locked in at a low price for our usage, but the delivery charge from the utility company continues to skyrocket. So we need to make up that difference with this budget increase of about $300,000. We also continue to see transportation costs increase. The prices of tires were the big one that we've seen throughout this current fiscal year. So we wanted to reflect that in this upcoming budget, as well as aligning historical expenditures. And for the past couple summers, we've been going over what we've been budgeting for our summer driver line, and we wanted to align that to be more in line with what we're actually spending. So we've been putting $50,000 in our budget for summer drivers the past couple summers, and we're actually spending closer to $76,000. So we wanted to bring that up to reflect those increase in driver salaries. School administration, this is where all the admin costs live. We are actually seeing just a modest increase driven by printer and copier replacements. So actually here at the high school, the printers and copiers have seen the end of their useful life. We need to replace 6 devices here in the high school, and then we have about 4 others within the district that need replacing. And this is the warrant article where printers and copiers are housed. Other instruction is just another modest increase at $13,000, driven by athletic and extracurricular increases, meaning stipends. Those the way stipends are calculated are based on the base salary of the teacher's contract, and as that goes up every year, the stipend line increases. We're actually saving money in our debt service, close to $90,000. As we pay more principal on our bonds, we actually owe less interest, which is great. So we're seeing a decrease year over year in our debt service. That's a nice thing to see as we continue to pay off those bonds. And finally, system administration. This is the central office and all the expenditures surrounding the superintendent, the business office, where we were able to find some optimization throughout the year, and we're looking to save about $80,000 in this next fiscal year. So we're actively finding efficiencies even as student service costs rise. Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Those 2 numbers are in essence factored in.
The new requests I haven't put into the warrant articles to show those increases. That's correct. And as the board recommends which ones to move forward with, then I can start putting those into their correct warrant articles, and then we can see the actual increases. Yeah, no problem.
So what's in the budget, what this budget invests in really, and it shifts, I can talk tonight, I must have had a long day. So it shifts from numbers to purpose. And it's really important that we continue to talk about that because every line behind the budget is a student, it's a classroom, or it's a community need, and we take that into consideration. So this proposal invests in early childhood expansion, special education, student support, staffing and service continuity, safety and security, facilities and operations, and technology. It also includes what we are working on. I've spoken to this about a little bit before. Is down in the bottom left corner is the MTSS system that we're using, which we are investing in strengthening our early intervention and targeted academic and behavioral supports. And also then finally our ELA pilot adoption. And as you're all familiar with, we are heading towards our district master plan and facilities master plan, and that's really important. So the larger point of this really is not just simply about rising costs, it's about sustaining and strengthening our systems, the people and the programs that support students every single day. The early childhood, one of the clearest examples of the strategic investment in this budget is the early childhood expansion. And you can see I've linked up in there strategic plan goal 1C, and we're meeting that goal as we move towards 2030. We opened additional three pre-K classrooms. We're looking to open another one next year through this budget process. And the classrooms really integrate early literacy, numeracy, and social emotional learning into a daily routines of these kiddos. And again, it directly supports our strategic plan goal 1C. So this next section, on your tables, you've all had a copy of the administrator's personnel requests and the non-personnel requests. And so anything that has a line through it has been taken out of the requests, and not because they've been cut, because we've been strategically able to replace them in a different way within the budget. So for example, grade 2 teacher, $120,000, we still need a grade 2 teacher because of the enrollment down in Harpswell. But looking at the enrollment across the district and looking at all the numbers of teachers we have in each building, we will move eventually a teacher from one of the buildings to Harpswell, so we do not increase costs. We did the same thing with school psychologists. We've had this position in the budget for a really long time in the hopes that we would get another full-time school psychologist, but they're very, very hard to come by. And so we've made some shifts from that, and we've finally taken that budget out and increased our contracted services line just a little bit. An RTIB paraprofessional from Mount Airy High School, this is a position that will go over to Region 10. And we were still able to do this because in our local entitlement budget, which is our federal funding for special education, we have enough carryover to actually support this position in there over the next couple of years. So we've moved that into there. So everybody is getting the things that they need, even with the pre-K special ed admin assistant. That will also go into the federal funding because of the way that that the special ed director has managed that and made it so that now we can shift some of those funds in there. So when I cross it out, it's not that they're not going to get it, it's just we're looking at it in a different way, and we found a different resource in order to be able to pull it from. We have an increase of behavioral health professionals, which are pairs that work with students with behavioral needs. And every year by contract, we have to add a few more to bring them from 30 to 35 hours. And so that's a contracted need that we have put in there. So that will stay. It's on green. You'll see that we have a floating nurse here after much debate and discussion between district administrators, principals, Amy Hamilton, school nurses. We've decided that we're going to add 2 nurses. And I have already spoken with others where we are going to be removing some positions that will directly affect this. So I'm not going to give you names or anything because that's not how we do that, but we are adding 2 nurses, and this, by doing that, offsets by doing what we're going to do that offsets this increase in cost. We were originally hoping to be able to place a pre-K at Bodenham, but because of the facility not being ready for that, we took that out, although we hope in the next couple of years we would be able to get that in there. Rick so kindly asks every year for permanent subs for ed techs, and In the past, we might have hired a permanent sub or hired a floater sub for a while, but after so many days, after so many hours, they become our employees, and you have to pay them like employees and not just subs, which means you have to pay their benefits and you have to pay them the hours that they're supposed to be paid by contract. So with Amy Hall's new structure, I think we're going to be able to work that out, and it's going to be less of an impact about worrying about para subs because of the way that it's all going to be managed. So that's being rolled out as well. Do you want to talk about the mechanic apprentice?
Sure. So this is something that we've gone a bit back and forth on with the mechanic apprentice. It was put into the support staff contract during negotiations a couple years ago, but we realized that the need really at the transportation department is more drivers, and hiring a mechanic apprentice wouldn't necessarily fill the more driver need. So the mechanic apprentice could, yes, drive a bus and could also work on the vehicles, but we really need to spend our time and efforts recruiting and retaining high quality drivers. So it felt not disingenuous, but it felt like we were really we weren't putting the priority of the funding towards the right avenues for filling driver needs.
Which is significant.
Yep.
Then we have, we had originally put in a leave specialist for the district office, and that is to address the Paid Family Medical Leave Act that just came out, and to process that, but we've decided to pause on that and see what happens and where it goes. And we'll look to see if it can be managed within central office this coming year without adding another position. We don't really know the outcome of that yet, or what's going to happen, because, it's just starting. So we'll take a look at that. We have a courier that's already on staff, and we're basically just moving that person's time to a little bit more to help with more of the food service deliveries, and I believe the mail as well. Yeah.
Summertime, yep.
And during the summertime. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Oh, did I miss something? Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Whew, thank you. And you, because I,
See, I reverse scroll. It's an old video game habit.
oh,
Sorry about that.
yeah. I'm using Evan's computer, which is really throwing me off. So we do have some instructional supports. Amy and Amanda they've spoken with you about the MTSS consultants, and we had about 30-something people in here about a week or so ago in working on that. And this is going to directly affect how we do special education and improve outcomes for students. And so we're really excited. And, if you were to look at it with the financial picture, this will hopefully help us to reduce some of the needs in special education so that everybody will be included. And we can't take away special ed funding, but we can definitely improve things. We have to do the PPEG evaluation platform. Our ELA program adoption, Amanda will be coming to you in the next couple of weeks to talk about that. We have some additional Gemini licenses, which is part of the Google programming, and using that. Heidi Wright has asked for AEDs for the different areas around the school because of sports. And so we are looking to fund that as well. We think that that's really important. That's definitely a safety thing. I want to talk to you a little bit about why the vape and drug reduction initiative is out when we originally thought it was going to be about $35,000. So we're still looking at this and finding out more about it and whether or not we're going to put it in. I don't know. I said if we'll bring it and bring it forward. There is a problem with vapes, and there is a problem with that going around many, many high schools. And there's different beliefs on both sides of this of whether it really works, whether it increases your suspensions, whether it does a whole bunch of things, but does it do its job? And do its job, I mean, deter students from bringing vapes to school and vaping in the bathroom, but also the hope for what Chris would hope for, Dr. Hoffman would hope for, is that early detection will help with those students who might do it for the first time in a bathroom. We're hoping to deter that. And so if we're coming down to employees having positions removed or removing positions that directly affect students as well, we talked a lot about this and whether or not we should keep this in here or not. So it has a line through it, but it's still one of those iffy things, like should we do it or should we not? But when you're talking about comparing it to positions, it's a hard choice. So I chose to take it out at this point, because what we don't want to do is put in $70,000 when we might have had to. If this doesn't work, we might have to go to another level and that would include digging down deeper into positions that are across the district. So initiatives for safety and security, it's originally we put that in there for 650,000 because I wrote a grant last fall for the Department of Justice, but we didn't get it. It's very competitive. And in order to outfit our entire district with cameras and for door systems, for, all kinds of security that we have, it's $650,000 right down to every little thing that you use within safety and security. However, we can't afford that in our budget this year, so I asked them if we could do it incrementally, and we reduced that to $250,000 instead. We do need to address some things, and we can't keep putting it off. That is the one area that keeps getting put off, and we've decided we can't keep doing that. We need to make some changes regarding safety and security. Our buildings are safe. We have good systems in place. This would just help to improve a lot of the things and make it also more efficient. Our phone system, believe it or not, is getting old, and so we need to upgrade that system, and that's about $40,000 for that. Again, if you're looking at facilities and equipment, the portable classrooms, Bodenham, that was because if we were going to do a pre-K there, we would have to have a portable classroom, and then we would need furniture and all of that, but we decided to take that out for this year and then open another pre-K at one of the other schools and using some of the teachers that are already there. So we have the numbers for the students to fill the program, but we're going to use a position that's already in the budget. So let's see. Pre-K fencing, we pulled that out, and we're going to be able to pay that out of this year's budget. Over at Woodside, we need a new fence because those little ones can get right over the current fence, and it's all rusted, and we need to make it safer for them. So Sean is working on that. We've kept in there our major maintenance line, which is $100,000. We'll keep that in there, and then Evan's going to talk to you about the SRRF bond.
So you've heard me talk about this for a couple weeks now, but this would be adding debt service to our current budget of about $9,344 at 0% interest for 5 years. Pretty similar, actually exactly the same as what we just heard from Sean Shabbat. This would be for at Bowdoin. It would be a bathroom overhaul of that space, and the state would pay 55% of it, and we'd be on the hook for the remaining 45%. And what's great about this is that Sean Johansson was able to find some efficiency within his capital budget where he believes that he'll be able to fund this out of his operating budget for the next 5 years. So that's not an additional cost that we're looking to, hold on to every year. He's gonna make do with what funds are available to him and offset the nearly $10,000. We missed one right here too.
Oh, thank you. And we have an old tractor at Woodside, and Mr. Mike Langley, who does he made a really good case for those of us that were at the facilities tour. I think it's like 25 years old, maybe is what he said. And it takes him 2 to 3 hours above and beyond to clear all the walkways and the areas that need to be ready for school on days of early snow. And so he needs a much more efficient one. They've beaten it down to the ground. And I think it will go to one of those places that, you have the tractors outside and people just keep them in their yards. So I couldn't say no to that because it's definitely needed, and it's a safety thing in my opinion. Oh, right down, here we go. So this is one as well. Things are in green, and these are still in the budget as well. But we do have a wrestling mat that is extremely old and is held together with duct tape. And it's pretty thin. And Heidi Wright did an audit. If you remember, she came to the finance committee meeting and talked about all the things that she needed or that the school district needed in the school. And so the priority definitely is the wrestling mat. The high jump package, they are all, the poles or the things that are on the side are all rusted out, and the mat has been around for so long that when you hit it, there's no bounce to it anymore. It's just simply boop. And we would have, this particular package would have a cover in it and then would last us for quite a bit longer than what we have now. The Polaris Ranger, while that sounds all fancy and everything, we have a golf cart that we use to drag, it's part of facilities as well, but we use the golf cart to drag the baseball and softball fields. And I can't remember what other fields they said that they use it for, but it's really taken a toll on that golf cart. And so this will be a multi-purpose Polaris Ranger 500 that will help with all of those needs in there. We need an ice machine because it can't keep up with the amount of sports and things that are happening. And then again, sideline chairs. If you go to the basketball games or the games in the gym, you'll see that those chairs, the things are all falling off, the pads are all breaking. The bottoms may have those little sticky things on them, but they're all not doing so well and they're just weak. And so we want it to look professional as well. And sideline chairs is a request. Okay, I went through that.
All right, so state funding over, let's see, since the fiscal year 2019, we continue to see that the state is funding the district, which is great news. Obviously, they're by statute, they have to do that, but we've seen an $8.6 million increase from this number of 13.8 million up to where we currently are with 22.39 million. The increase that we got last year from 24-25 to 25-26, sorry, it's really hard to hover over those with the little zoom thing in the way, was just under a 1% increase. We've actually jumped just shy of 5% from last year to this year, and that's due to efficiencies we've made with our state reporting system. The way we classify employees is really important to how you get funding within the state funding system. So we've done a lot of work looking at how we classify employees, and that also yielded nearly a 5% increase for us for this coming fiscal year. All right, I wanted to talk about the budget summary and what our current outlook is for how we're going to be funding this budget. Obviously, the superintendent's budget that I've been talking about today is over $61 million. We also have to factor in adult education. That's something that's part of what the towns are responsible for funding. When we subtract out the state subsidy of 22 million, we also have to think about, are we going to offset the budget with usage from our fund balance? I've presented two numbers here because I'd like to present a couple scenarios, two scenarios of how we can use that fund balance. And then we also factor in other revenue. Last year, I used the figure of $50,000. We're actually, the revenue we've taken in so far this year is around $60,000. And just some changes that we're making to policies, I think that we can hit about $100,000 in other revenue. And that's mostly like building use fees. Transportation gets funded through student activities. There's a bunch of things that the district does take in on other revenue. It's not very significant, but it does help just offset our budget. So depending on what we decide or what the finance committee decides for the fund balance utilization, the amount to be locally funded is 37.6 or 37.1 or somewhere in the middle of that, depending on how we utilize the fund balance. And I'll present more on this in a few slides. It's you or me?
Oh, that's me. Thank you. So this is the student enrollment by town. That became a big question. And really, this is an important one to look at because the principals looked at it and they're like, that's not right. And I said I had to go back and make sure that it was definitely correct. But down at the bottom of it, you can see when these numbers were pulled. And so these numbers were pulled from the state certified October 1st, 2025 child count report. And that's the number that we build our budget off of. So way back from October of 25, but also these enrollments are not, these enrollment figures are based on resident, not on their resident town, not on town, not by school enrollment. So for example, we may have some Bodenham kids that go to Woodside. They're actually counted as part of Bodenham and all the other towns. And so that was what was a little bit confusing today, but these are accurate. We're at, you can see right across the board, this will be in there for folks to look at. I think there were multiple people that asked about that information, and I think it's important to see so that you can see how it's all kind of spread out. But there we are with that.
I wanted to talk about our historical use of the fund balance. This goes back to 2018. And just to explain the chart a little bit before we dig into it, this is the ending June 30th year, what our adopted budget was. And that includes adult education, this number right here. And then this is importantly for 25 and 26, we don't have our audit results. So I put an asterisk next to it, but audited ending fund balance. This is the amount of money that we've put towards that subsequent year to offset taxes. This is what we've designated to go towards reserve accounts. And then this would be our unassigned fund balance remaining after considering the assigned to reduce taxes and designated to reserve accounts. So as I stated, 25 and 26 numbers are not final because they haven't been audited. But I'm assuming that at the end of the 2025 fiscal year, which was just last year, that we added about $1.5 million into our fund balance. And that is something that's between the amount of money we make in revenue on our interest, so interest income, and also underspending our budget. So finding ways to not spend the entire budget. I'm also expecting a similar number for the end of this coming fiscal year. And that's why I'm assuming that we'll have about $2.7 million in our fund balance at the end of this coming fiscal year. So I want to be transparent about this information. I felt that I was playing around with all these numbers in my head. So I felt like putting it on a chart would be the best way for everyone to be able to look at this. We just received our draft financials for the 2024 audit. Our audited fund balance before considering committed usage and reserve accounts was $5.6 million. And then we used money to offset taxes, which was $2.565 million and $385,000 for reserve accounts, leaving us $2.7 million at the end of 2024. And that number is audited, and I plan to show that number in our draft financials tonight, just to back it up.
Evan,
Yeah,
novice question.
yes,
I think you just answered it, but I'm going to restate it. You can read this chart. This chart is cumulative year over year. So you can read it up. You
yes,
following my question?
yes.
Yes. It's not as if, so for example, at the end of fiscal year 22, when it was 6.2, that includes the 5.335 that was left the year before. It's additive.
That's correct.
It's a 1 point, no, it's a $900,000 additive. Give or take. You're the math guy now.
Yeah, I think I follow. Yes.
But I'm
No.
it's not as if every year there's a remainder or balance of 5.3 and then another 6.2 the next year. This is essentially the checkbook register year over year.
Correct.
Okay.
And also, I think importantly, I think in 2013, I was going back into our old files, and I think we had a negative fund balance then. So we've really spent a lot of time trying to be fiscally responsible. And for example, 2018, we didn't put very much money towards offsetting taxes at all. In fact, I missed a zero here, but this was only $400,000 in 2019. And then we've slowly, a couple zeros missed here. I apologize about that. But we've really started to increase this fund balance number. And I wanted to present this information because I think at our current rate of $2.565 million, it just isn't sustainable for our fund balance. And I think it's really important for us to all have this information as we move into this budget season.
Question and reading this chart, if we did do the 2565 again, we would basically be down to 200,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
So, yeah.
so I think we just need to be intentional about how we use the fund balance until we get our audited information at least. Yeah, maybe even after that.
So where you said assumes a 1.5 addition, that's put into the 26 line or the 25?
Yeah, I put that into there.
Okay.
Actually, okay, so I took this number, 1.2.
Mhm.
It's like a remainder of 1.5 from the audit of 2025, which you don't have yet. That's what you're
Yes,
imagining being added to the audited fund
that's what I'm
balance of
imagining.
1.2.
So yeah, this number minus this equals this,
Mhm.
plus 1.5
Equals that.
equals 2.7.
Yeah. And it just so happens we have an audit update later in our agenda tonight.
We do.
So if you've got questions about that, you will have a
And-
bite at that.
And this number could go up as well based on another carryover here, could go up another 1.5 or 1 million or less or more.
You're
but-
making an educated guess because we don't know yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, I don't have that audit yet. I don't have 25. That's based on my pulling all the expenditure data from last year and looking at what we've made in interest income, adding those two things together. And it's about $1.5 million.
That's the internal figure, you might say.
Yep.
The unaudited internal figure.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. We're able to carry up to 9% of our previous year's budget in our fund balance. So if you were to take 9% of 58 million, I'm not sure what that math is right off the top of my head, just under 5 million, I would assume, is the amount we're statutorily allowed to carry in our fund balance. If we go over that, we have to make a plan to spend it down over 3 years. If we're under that, that's well and good in the mind of the state, but we do need to have under or around 9% of our fund balance, or we can have up to 9%. It was a lot lower before. I think it was 3%. And then during COVID, they bumped it up to 9% because expenditures were kind of out of control.
And it was temporary until this past summer when they made it permanent at
Yep.
9%.
And they floated the idea of 5% for a while, but they settled on 9. Any other thoughts here? So this is scenario number 1. This is using a lower fund balance amount of $1.5 million. You can see the overall increase to the taxes of the district would be 9.36%. The tax increases by town are listed here on this right-hand column where my mouse is. And wanted to present that as like more of a conservative approach, perhaps, to the fund balance utilization. And then the second one, if we use $2 million, which is more in fund balance, we would be an overall 7.91% increase over a previous year in a tax increase. And then this is the final slide here. Somewhere in the $37 million range, we need to fund locally, whether that be a 7.91% increase or a 9.36% increase. That's where we stand currently as the date of this proposal, which reflects a 6.11% increase in our expenditures. So there's probably room in all of this to deliberate and come up with a recommendation, but I wanted to present those facts. And this budget really reflects our commitment to students. Responsible planning and long-term district stability is really the goal here. Making progress with student needs as they're increasing, and this budget responds to those needs with integrity and purpose. So that's the last slide.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Heidi. I'm going to open it up to questions from the board members here in just a moment. Sorry, you want to say them, Heidi? I'm going to cut you off. So I was going to say, so just a recommendation of process to the rest of us. So an abbreviated version of this budget will be presented at Harpswell on Wednesday, and then at Topsom on Monday, and at Bowdoin on Tuesday. And those 3 presentations will be identical, off the identical presentation. And then we'll have a meeting afterwards as a committee to begin the deliberations, and a second meeting a week later to sort of finalize our budget recommendation. So tonight is an opportunity for us to ask questions. We can ask for things we'd like to see, but we will not see those questions or potential changes or scenarios presented at the next 3 meetings. For the purposes of consistency and clarity, we don't want those meetings to have wildly different information or looks at things. So it'll be very clear this is what the superintendent is recommending. There'll be consistency at those 3 meetings, but in the background, they might be getting us answers, getting answers based on community questions we get at those forums, right? So just from a process perspective to lay that out for you guys. So tonight's a great night to ask questions, ask about scenarios, but sort of understanding we might not dig into them in any real substance until the March 23rd beginning of deliberations. Does that make sense to everybody? Awesome. And with that, you may ask your questions. Kim?
I didn't ask earlier about the safety and security, the big ticket one, the sort of big,
Mm-hmm.
the big, the
250,000.
250,000, yeah, and obviously kudos to you for sort of thinking about how to spread it out over a period of time. How, I can imagine the kinds of improvements may or may not be things that might get addressed in the context of major construction projects. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, how does that work in terms of anticipating
Yeah.
potential big projects through the facilities master plan?
Totally a great question, because I ask the same question continuously. And I said, well, should we do this now or should we wait till later? So the fact is some of the things that we can do now are able to, they have like a 10-year shelf life. And so we are able to, if we do decide to build new or reconstruction, many of those things can be transferred over pretty easily, taken down and transferred over. And so we've talked a lot about that because I'm worried about that as well. But based on what Nick and Sean and Evan and I have all spoken about, those items would be stuff that we would want to be able to keep and be able to use for a significant amount of time.
Great, thank
So
you.
that's what we were thinking about. We've asked all those same questions.
I guess I'd like both of you to offer me pros and cons for which scenario, 1 or 2 that I should be thinking about. And I know there's like different, there's like straight kind of the financial picture of the future, and there's also the community tax burden. So I'm just trying to weigh, which is like, I have in my head the phrase penny wise, pound foolish, or
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to.
So I asked thank you, Gregory, when we were figuring this out and talking about it, and, we've used, what did we say, 2.75 over the last several years, something to that. 2.56. And we've used that consistently because we had a very large fund balance. And so we were able to use the funds to be able to reduce taxpayer burden. But along at the same lines, while we were doing that, we were also looking at our budget for unfilled positions or things that had not been used. So for the last 2.5 years, that's what we've been doing. And we are closer to what we actually, like dollar for dollar, item for item, is where we're at now. And so that doesn't, by using the 2.56, we've drawn down that fund balance. And right now we still don't know exactly what it is because we don't have an audited amount. So I'm going to give you my best recommendation. I think if you were to, I asked Evan to put in 1.5, but I asked him to also put in 2.0 to really see what the difference is and to look at those scenarios. And our recommendation is we don't think that we should go higher than 1.5, and we still think that that's a stretch. But we wanted you to see the numbers and what it did to each of the towns and be extremely fiscally responsible. And that's what we've been trying to do by looking at our budget over the last several years and making sure we didn't have any excess in there. Even as of today, we were still looking at some positions and we're like, should that be funded still or shouldn't it be? Because again, people talking about enrollment going down, even though we're stabilized right now, we don't know what the future is going to bring. If we draw down that fund balance any more than what we're at, it becomes not fiscally responsible. And it's not a good thing to be in that position. I know in 2013, there was a negative fund balance. I'm not willing to go there.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say too is that we've done a lot just internally about how we track our budget. And I think the controls that we've implemented have allowed for better visibility into where we're going to end our budget. And something I've been kind of beating the drum on is that we've been encumbering salaries and benefits from the start of the fiscal year. So if you just take out what we'll have as a remainder for health insurance, unspent salaries, Medicare, and Social Security, so really your FICA, we should, based on the financial report from February, have about $1 million left over that we can carry into our fund balance. And that does not include interest income, that more time, that money that spends time in our bank account accrues interest. So I think that some controls that we've implemented will set us up for success going forward. But for this fiscal year itself, not having the 25 audit complete and being in the middle of 26, I wanted to present this information just so you all could come up with a good recommendation.
Well, we will.
Do it, Frank.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll make a recommendation that we go with the 1.5.
Yeah.
That seems to be what are requesting, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
I'll say amongst the two options presented, I personally agree that that's the right way to go. And just looking at the trend, I can't help but wonder if we should be looking at $1 million, which I know has an impact budget, taxation wise, but like, we relied on it pretty heavily. And I remember one of those years in these conversations, we bumped that number up late to account for a late insurance number. I think it was 3 years ago, I want to say.
It was during my time.
Yeah, I think it was your first year, because I think it was the year I was chairing. I think it's the committee is when that happened. And we're like, oh gosh, we got to add some money, but that's just for this year. But then it carried over to the next year, and like, that's easy to do that. And so I don't know that I'm necessarily saying I officially recommend we do $1 million, but I just want to put that idea out there that we should be trying to trend down no matter what. So I like Frank, I think I agree. I think 1.5 is probably our ceiling. But it does lead me to think, do we need to, again, this is just me thinking off the dome, do we need to think about some scenarios where we try to shave a little more money out of the budget, which I know has implications, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but just it makes me wonder, I guess is all I'm saying.
So behind the scenes, I'll just respond to that too, Hudson, because behind the scenes, we have tier 2, and tier 2 is all staff or something very drastically different, because over the years, we've aligned everything to our strategic plan, the needs of the students, we have low class sizes, we have schools that we are looking to possibly consolidate. Those are all things that really affect the budget. And so I had such anxiety all weekend just because of like, oh my goodness, we're talking about staff, and to have to talk with staff about stuff like this is really hard. But we have to be fiscally responsible. And I think we've been really transparent over the last few years and making sure that every dollar is accounted for. Not that it wasn't before, just that we know exactly where it's going. But it is a significant difference when you go to tier 2 cuts.
And the last thing I'll say to that too is that we did budget heavy for our health insurance, which we should know by early April what that increase from last year to this year will be.
Yeah.
I budgeted at 15%. I got a letter, I think it was sometime last week, saying that they're going to cap it at 14%, which is great. I haven't reflected that number through this model yet.
I say don't.
And I haven't yet, because I don't want us to be in a situation where we have to, add
Yeah.
more fund balance. But that is an area that should hopefully yield a bit of savings at some point.
That's great to know. And just responding really quickly ahead of your point about what tier 2 is, that was my suspicion, right? So I wasn't saying, should we think about it with any kind of lightness, because I know sort of what that means, but.
Well, the only way to be prepared for this, if it doesn't work well and it just isn't, acceptable to go in at these numbers, is going to that next tier 2 and tier 3. And then, that's going to require a lot of work and a lot of conversation. But I think it's important to put that out there,
Yeah.
that we are where we need to be based on what we need. We would have to do some arrangements, rearranging if we were to go to tier 2.
Yeah, thank you. Jessica?
Just remind me, if the health insurance comes in under budget, does that get applied to this fiscal year we're considering? Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what I thought so. Thank you.
Mechanically, what would happen is, we would have already, as a committee, recommended a budget, but prior to the board adopting it in April, everyone would come in and say, great news, everybody, it's lower than what they recommended.
Yeah, and I think our final board adoption meeting is April 9th. They have said that the latest date they'll get us that information is April 10th. So we could.
If we can see what's happening schedule-wise as we get closer and adjust as necessary, but we have.
Thank you.
I think Frank can back me up on this, or Amy, we have brought slight reductions to the district budget meeting when that number has been reflected, I think. So anyway, we've got some ability to make sure that we're saving everything we should rightfully be saving. But
And the point is, you haven't carried it through yet.
Correct.
But if it becomes more official, you will carry it through at some point.
Correct.
Right.
Gregory,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'd like to talk about the special education increasing that trend. And I was wondering if there's a trend that, because we're investing in early education and the COVID era is behind us, but I know that's still making an impact because I'm looking at an Arsenal Anchor story about the increase in special education, and it says 34% of increase in sixth graders. This is in 2024, and 30% increase in fifth graders. I'm just wondering if there's any way that you might see a trend decreasing because of in special education, because of the investments that we're making now.
yeah.
So it's my.
Yeah, that is 100% the hope of all of this, is that early intervention really does help us to decrease that because we're catching kids earlier, we're intervening earlier. But also the model that we're moving towards is really designed to do that, is to trend the numbers down, not because it's not needed, but we can do it in a little bit of a different way. Let me give you the most basic example of this. We make referrals for special education, and at times we've done by this time of year, and I'm just pulling these numbers off the top of my head from a conversation that I had with Amy, was that we were at, like, the last year at this time, 60 new referrals for special education. And a few weeks ago, I think we were at 15. That's huge. And that's the work that has been happening in the district regarding this. And so she's got a great vision on all of this. She's training the people the way they need to be trained and moving in that direction. People are willing to do it. And so it becomes much more inclusive. And the hope is that that's what happens. That's the design of it. So.
Got two, one easy one and one hopefully also easy one. So the first one, none of this shows any of the title funding because that's just a different federal bucket. They give us the money, it gets directly spent and doesn't get integrated into this. Is that correct?
That's correct. We haven't been provided our allocation for the title funds yet. So this is all just general fund.
Great. That's what I thought. Just wanted to double check.
Yep.
And then my next question was, perhaps for our first deliberation meeting, could you bring a small write-up from Amy Hamilton on the nursing changes? Just so because I don't think she presented, and I don't need her to come and present, or that's not my request at the very least. But I'd love to just hear a little bit about what that adjustment will be and what that will look like, just so that we can understand it, if that's okay.
Got it.
Thank you. Like I said, hopefully that's easy too. Anyone else have any questions, anything that they'd like any homework they want to assign for administration? Ryan, go for it. No, you're good. You can borrow my mic here.
One piece I would be kind of potentially interested in seeing. Let me pause. I'll follow up with you. I'm not able to articulate it the way I want. I'm trying to think about per pupil cost a little differently. And I'm going to hold on asking, sorry.
It's okay.
My wheels started spinning and then they came off the rails.
And mine's been doing that all day.
I will say, this is not really germane to tonight's discussion, because Ryan brought it up, I'll say it. When you were presenting the per pupil costs, it did make me think about some of the facilities, major facilities renovations we're talking about. And you can't really, in a single year, say, oh, we renovated Harpswell, it cost $1 million a student, because of that or whatever. You got to think about how it spreads it over, the expected life of the renovation. It just made me think about, as we get further into that planning process and start making some of those long-term decisions, it might be interesting to sort of see those breakdowns based, the cost over expected life relative to enrollment, just for comparison's sake. So that's, again, nothing for now. I just can't help but think about what's next. So thank you. Jessica.
Heidi, going way back to the major district wins slide at the very beginning of the slideshow.
Sorry if you're getting dizzy at home. Yeah, there we go.
Science above benchmark.
Yeah.
High school science scores rose above the state benchmark, which is great. And then you've got a semicolon, students meeting expectations jumped from 26.3 to 41.2%, which sounds great. Can you elaborate a little bit on what is meant by meeting expectations, please?
Meeting expectations and the evaluations that we're doing and that they're completing them. And so I have actually what I will send out shortly, not tonight, but in the next few weeks, a state of the district annual plan. And in there, it's about 70 pages, but it breaks down every single one of these things so that you can see, and it directly links to that. So there'll be a better explanation in there, but that's part of that whole evaluation system. And it was just a highlight, and I didn't really dig deeper into it. So, but that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, I think it's safe to say you've given us a lot to think about. And I do know, because we've sat through so many of the meetings, just how much work this represents. So thank you both. Thank you, Evan, to your team and the people I know that have been assisting you on data gathering. Heidi, again, to all your administrators, their assistants, like the whole district, puts work into this. This is excellent work. And now the board gets to listen to what people have to say and think about how we want to take it. So thank you guys for all of that. And to the committee, to the board members here, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, feel free to follow up with me or Ryan as the board chair directly, and we can help funnel your questions appropriately to have answers at our budget deliberation meeting, which again, just as a reminder, is on Monday, March 23rd is the beginning of our deliberations. That's when we'll dig into the meat. So the more questions you might have ahead of that, the more answers we will have for that. And with that, we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the financial report.
All right, I'm just going to stop sharing so I can pull up my other tab here. So just give me 1 second. All right, this is February of this year, ending, and the end of February, should say. I'll cut to the chase. If we're thinking about February being the 8th month in our fiscal year, that would represent 66% of the way through, or I guess 67% of the way through our budget. Our current expenditures are sitting at 54%. So like I said, some of those financial control measures that we've been kind of doing as a department within the business office are really paving ways to better visibility into our spending. One area that I did want to highlight, I can start at the top, but one area that I want to highlight because I talked about it in the budget presentation was our utility costs, particularly around electricity. You can see that at the end of February, we were 80% expended over what we put in the budget this year. So that's why I think investing in that utility side of things will be important for us moving forward. So we have 4 more months of the fiscal year, and we only have about $87,000 left in that bucket to utilize.
The financial report? Tangentially related, we won't start seeing the paid family medical leave stuff until next year, correct?
We're going to start pulling our first deduction on May 8th. And that is, most folks in the state started having their deductions pulled out January 1st. Because we're on a private insurance plan, they offset, part of joining that private insurance plan, they offset that time fence. So we are able to start our first payment of deductions from both the district and from employees starting on the May 8th payroll.
And it's not until, is it January 1st, they can start taking advantage of it next year?
No, they can start taking advantage. They can start filing claims April 1st. So
we'll see what happens with our sublines, I think is the answer there.
Filing claims, but the claims won't get approved by the state until May 1st of this year. So,
gotcha. So there'll be a little bit of a delay, but we're not far off from seeing what that might look like.
we are very close from this program implementing itself. And I think there's still a lot of questions that the state hasn't answered around it. And I know a lot of employers are kind of scrambling with this.
Yeah.
The fact that we signed on with a private insurer, I think is somewhat beneficial because it kind of takes the burden over to them. They are going to be the ones approving all of the claims, and we're just going to be the ones processing, giving them information about how much sick time the folks have, what their payments are, and all that. But we're definitely a little nervous about the rollout because there hasn't been a lot of information that gets updated regularly. It's kind of been like, we still don't know. We're going to figure that out. So
I appreciate you guys are getting in the best position we can get in, given all the unknowns that everyone in the state is facing. So that's good that we're, gearing up in that regard. Heidi?
I wanted to make sure that, because I want to go back to my notes, so I'll give you a better explanation about expectations. So on the NWE and the main assessments, when you're meeting expectations or below expectations, it's like level 1, level 2, level 3, or 4. And so 21 to 40% of our students met level 3 or 4, which was meeting expectations or above. That makes more sense.
Thank you, Heidi.
Didn't want to leave it.
Good clarification. We like clarifications, no matter when they come. Any other questions for Evan about the financial report? Sounds like it's time for agenda item 4, the fiscal year 2024 audit update.
So we're very close to finishing the draft financials. I wanted to illustrate that fund balance calculation and how our auditors pulled that information. This was actually a request that I had. So they had just given us this $5.6 million figure. And I said, I was looking at old audits from 2021 and 2022 when we had a different firm auditing us. And they had broken out what we were putting into capital reserves. And they had also had a line called assigned carryover, which was that line that talks about offsetting your budget. So then you are left with an unassigned fund balance. And I wanted to, sorry, let me get out of that. Let me click out of there. I wanted our auditors to make sure that they included this information on our draft financials so that we didn't have any surprises about what was assigned and what's in our carryover and what have you. So this is a change that they made from the last time I presented the draft financials, and this is the last thing that they provided us.
And so at this point, process-wise, when are we ready to bring it back to this committee in sort of its final form?
One more thing on that, and then I think we'll be ready. These capital reserve funds, it says in the warrant articles that at the end of the 2023-2024 fiscal year and in the 25 fiscal year, the board has the authority to authorize those transfers. This time period was when there was a bit of staff turnover within our office, so these transfers were never authorized by the board. We can see what the impact would be if they were authorized by the board, but what I wanted to say is that you all still have the authority to move these funds into their respective capital reserve accounts.
So it sounds like 385,000 just moved into the unassigned fund balance that we could then remove back into their 3 reserves. Is that a correct summary?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess that could be something that we talk about for ahead of the budget meeting. Because if we move it, then it's got to get voted on at the district budget meeting, correct?
It just has to be at a board meeting.
Okay, just a board thing. Sorry, didn't mean to.
And I checked with our attorney on that, and he said, even though you're in the 26th fiscal year now, the board just has to.
Okay.
You have the ability, because it was in the warrant articles that it was after the 24 fiscal year, that you still have the ability to authorize it now.
Does the administration recommend we do that? It sounds like maybe yes.
I think based on what we're trying to do with facilities and other financial planning, it maybe is a good idea, since that was the intent of it in 2024, to retroactively make those changes.
So it sounds like that's the committee members. Do you have any thoughts, objections? Because I think if we want to do that, we can just put it on our March meeting agenda to do that. What do you guys? I agree with Frank, I think personally.
And I'm sorry, where the money now is in the general fund and it would move into the capital?
It's in this unassigned fund balance right here. So if you just took this 2.7 and you added in the 385, that would be the unassigned fund balance. So it would be about just over $3 million. But it's just sitting in our fund balance right now, unassigned, and we just need to assign it to the correct capital reserve accounts.
And your far right column is presumed that with the 1.4 and unassigned deficits is presuming we have the money in the reserves, correct?
That's correct.
Great.
I think. Wait, can you say that again?
So your far right column, sort of what we're planning towards, is with 1.432 million in the unassigned fund balance, is assuming that we will have that 385,000 in the reserve balances. It's sort of, you accounted for it in your fund balance estimates that we would do this.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. So were we to say yes to Ryan, put this on the agenda, this will reflect the numbers we saw presented tonight, basically. So thumbs up from the committee. Excellent. Let's go ahead and do that, Ryan and Heidi and Evan.
So then, once the vote happens, well, actually, we can sign off on the audit as, yes, we've reviewed the draft, we like the draft, and then they can make this change and we can vote on it, and then we'll have our
Great.
final 24 audit.
So then, just thinking about presentation format, because we talked about, yeah, good job, you guys. Ryan is exactly correct to applaud. So this committee's really active work ends in March. We're in the final stretch because April 9th, like you said, is when the board adopts the budget. So we can schedule a presumably relatively short, currently unscheduled meeting of the Finance Committee to hear that presentation and ask questions ahead of bringing it to the board for recommendation. So let's keep in touch on what you think your timing estimate is, because it's the 24th is our board meeting, is that correct? Something like that, something like that. So maybe yeah, okay, I knew it was in the ballpark. I'm not the board chair, you guys, I don't remember all that stuff. Okay. 24th of April, school vacation, we have 26th of March. Yes, no, it's all good. Listen, it's that time of year when everything happens at lightning speed. I get you, Kim. So anyway, I will coordinate with Evan and Heidi a little bit, but let's maybe assume that first week in April, second week in April somewhere, we meet to hear the audit presentation. That sound good to everybody ahead of vacation? Just so we can close the books on that chapter and move on to the next one. We do, but so if we could do it before that, that would be great. Then we could vote to accept the audit on April 9th is my thinking. So let's yeah, well, what we talked about doing was hearing the presentation from the auditor as the committee instead of as the board, just to streamline that. But yeah, exactly, it'll be very quick, I think.
And we're okay with digital if I...
100%, they
Okay.
can join us via Zoom, and depending on how the scheduling looks, if we, agree that, great. Oh, then we could maybe even do it before that. But if for reasons of quorum, Heidi and Ryan agree that it's better for the entire meeting to be digital, we can, do that for the committee, depending on how our schedules align, since it is an unscheduled meeting. So I will circle in with them, circle in with all of you, and we'll make a plan to move forward. But yeah, that should be a 30 to 45-minute meeting, I would imagine, depending on how many questions we have for the auditors. Awesome. Any other questions for Evan about the audit, the state of things there? Seeing none, we can move on to our advocacy follow-up, but not unlike our last meeting. We have some members of the audience, and if the committee doesn't object, I was going to offer the audience the opportunity to comment now while the data is fresh before we start talking about communication. So if absent any objections from the committee, I will look to the audience and say, is there any desire for public comments? All right, looks like there is none. And so now we can move on to our advocacy follow-up. So to sort of recap where we're at, there have been 3 major, let's call them studies, released by the state government over the last couple of weeks. We had the Governor's Commission on School Construction Funds. You may remember that study is the one that says, wow, there's $11 billion worth of school construction that the state needs to do in the next 15 or so years. There was the MEPRI report on the EPS allocation formula. Their charge, again, as a reminder, was predominantly to look at the equity of distribution, not make massive funding changes. So they did end up recommending some funding changes. And then the third one is the task force on property tax relief, which met and offered its preliminary recommendations. And I believe they have asked for authority to meet again throughout this year to give another set of recommendations in like December, when we'll have a new governor. So those 3 documents all came out relatively recently. We've been talking about the EPS one for almost 2 years. The Governor's Commission on School Construction, we've been talking about for at least a year. We got the preliminary report last April. The property tax one is much newer. But anyway, all this information came out. And my read, when I read through the documents, and I was lucky enough as a member of the MSBA board to hear presentations from the bodies that generated, not the property tax, but I heard a member of the Governor's Commission, I heard a member from MEPRI come, was able to hear sort of direct presentations. And I believe Heidi got to join other superintendents and hear that similar presentation after me. You both did, which is great. So we had some direct firsthand experience with some of these presentations. There's a lot of documentation out there. So I collected that documentation. I put it in the budget folder for all of you guys to look at. And my question to you is, I think Hudson Hayward, one member of the board, thinks that these measures all represent lots of hard work. They've done exactly what they've been asked to do. But I look at their recommended solutions, again, well within the scope of their charge, and I say, not good enough, basically. And I think that this is a moment for us to engage in some advocacy. A couple comments that I heard after our last meeting when I brought this up was, trying to focus on, again, not saying any one of these ideas are better or more important than others, just sort of listing out through them a little bit. The idea of trying to focus on the problem, not necessarily specific solutions. So here is the shelf here's the cliff rather that we're looking at. Here are the problems. Here's where we're falling short. We need solutions. I also heard a fun idea, the idea that public education is a matter of national defense. And we spend trillions of dollars on national defense. What if we put a fraction of that at a federal level towards schools? And that's a nationwide solution, not just a Maine solution, obviously, but I actually quite like that because I think the idea of an educated populace, an educated citizenry, is incredibly powerful. And I think we all, regardless of whether or not we agree with the national defense aspect of that, all of us are here because we care about public education and think it's important. So I think that there's something to that at the very least. So those are some ideas that were brought to me directly, but now I kind of want to hear from you guys. The idea being, I'd love to sort of focus on a couple ideas that we can, hand over to Ryan, or which I can help Ryan turn into a letter that this committee would recommend the board authorize Ryan to publish. And we can also talk about what publishing means. Is it sending it to, again, I can think of a big list, our legislators, the heads of some of the committees that are important, our federal congressional delegation, the governor's office. There's people running for governor, right? There's lots of different levels of people to whom this message might be important because we are looking at larger solutions than all the isolated districts, all the isolated towns trying to solve, with their little hammers the best we can when there's larger tools available to larger bodies. So I'll shut up now because what I really want to do is I want to hear from you guys and start taking some notes so that we can see what we want to recommend, if that makes sense. So, yes.
On Monday, did they do any on the legislative thing on Monday?
So yeah, so I can tell you the MSBA and the MSSA both voted to support the changes to LD 2226, I think is the number, which is the EPS funding change. To recap for anyone listening, they made some recommendations based on, the bill rather incorporates the MEPRI recommendations and includes around $85 million of new school funding to go into the EPS formula. Now, $85 million is a drop in the bucket. This is sort of the foundation of my "this is not sufficient" rant. But it includes alterations to the transportation formula that includes more funding. It changes the teacher pay matrix so that it's baselined at 1 instead of an average. So whereas before you might have people who are calculated to get lower than the average, lower than average, because that's how averages work. Now we're using a minimum, so the matrix with a 1 level will better distribute costs to particularly districts that have higher costs in their cost of living, calculations. That'll be really good, and there's like 30 some odd million that we're getting integrated into the EPS formula because of that. And there were a couple other changes. There were some things that I believe both the MSSA and the MSBA thought were bad ideas within the bill, and they gave testimony to that point. There were some adjustments on like special ed that were balanced with different ones, and the testimony was like, hey, doing this thing is bad, but because it undermines this thing, so just do that thing, don't worry about that thing, and it'll all balance out. But broadly speaking, the testimony from both organizations, the School Board Association and the Superintendent Association, was to support the bill. And I will say that as far as the MSBA is concerned, I was a big voice in the room saying, our testimony must make clear this is not enough. Now, it's again, Hudson Hayward, one person who was saying that, but that testimony was provided in that venue at least, because again, I think it's an important message.
I have a quick question that'll put you on the spot, so if you don't know the answer, that's fine. And your comment on the cost of living kind of, I think, triggered my interest a little bit. I mean, I guess I can see how cost of living could maybe be something that's factored in more at the local level versus the state contribution level. Like there's different pieces of it, right? Like a higher cost of living is going to be higher in areas that have more money. And so how that is, was there discussion about how to balance that?
So where that factors in is it factors in based on, in your EPS report, what your salary needs are. And so if you live in an area with a higher cost of living, your salary needs are calculated to be higher in that context. Now that still gets measured against your district's ability to pay. And so if you guys don't know the term minimum receivers are districts that are essentially wealthy enough that the state says, we're not even going to pretend to do 55% for you. You're going to get the minimum amount regardless of because your ability to pay is so great, the state doesn't see it as worthwhile. So like Saco, Kennebunk is a minimum receiver. There are several, I think Portland is, right? There's several such districts across the state that are minimum receivers. And so that's another way that like there's state balancing in those regards when you have an ability to pay, even if your cost of living is higher. But the way that most districts see the cost of living adjustment is there's a matrix they apply to the various staffing needs that the EPS says you should have, and those get multiplied out. You know, if they start with a baseline of $50,000, I'm making up a number, and you know maybe the Bath Brunswick Topsom area gets a 1.1 multiplier to that, so it's 55,000 or whatever, and so on and so forth based on cost of living. So there's that has been sort of redesigned somewhat to bring better, like I think significantly better equity. And there was every district in the state benefited from this adjustment except for Skowhegan, and Skowhegan was an exception because like of an old adjustment that they made like 15 years ago that sort of like had caused them to be out of alignment. But literally every other district, my understanding is, benefited from that change. So it was sort of an easy one to support. I'm sorry, Skowhegan. The other critique that I had, which is sort of one of those things about data, is like the special education does an increase based on your local student poverty rate. So districts with higher levels of student poverty get an adjustment up of their special education money. And I think that's great. We should do it. My critique is I think student poverty is not necessarily the best measure of poverty in a region, right? You think of that as extending to, can your populace pay? Using that as essentially as a metric to get to income. And I think it's not a great metric to get to income, but the presentation from EPRI was pretty convincing that they agreed there just aren't any better ones. So, you know, it's sort of like it's not worth putting up a huge stink about the fact that it's not great. They all know it's not great, but at the moment, there's not a better way to get like income-based data that's that granular other than poverty rate of students in the schools. That's sort of the best that they have, which again is driven by a lot of that form submission that Heidi has been pushing so hard since she started as the interim superintendent.
So I want to make sure that we talk about that as well, because there are some things that we learned from Paula Gravel, and who was the person that led this workshop.
Paula Gravel is the person in charge of EPS. She's great. She knows how important it is. She's awesome.
And as we move forward, we are going to be looking at a way to make sure that we get every single name on that list, because as Evan said, that I think it was RSU 58 that got 98%. It's a huge thing. It's not just about economic disadvantage. What it's about, that those numbers are about funding schools and keeping taxes down. And that's the line that we're going to go with. Fill out the form because it's about funding our schools and keeping your taxes down. And we need all that information. So next spring and then summer, we'll do a really big push. We have some new ways that she provided to us that we didn't know about that we'll be able to hopefully collect a lot more of those. And we could see a difference in that funding.
Okay, two thoughts. This is like operating on the spring forward. Makes you tired at night.
It does indeed.
I'm holding the two thoughts in my head. So the first thought was when Robbie Feinberg came, I mean, I appreciate the letter, but he was pretty down on letters. I remember him saying that public comment opportunities, appearing in front of panels. And so I'm interested in like the people who make these. I mean, I know it's an election year, so we're talking about the things that we want to happen after the dust settles and the new governor and a new legislature. But inviting our elected officials to come talk to us. I'm thinking about the governors, asking each candidate for governor, sending from the board a questionnaire so we can know what they think. Because I haven't even looked at the governors, so I'd be interested in those kinds of
Yeah.
one-on-one interactions. Any kind of way to meet people or to learn from people who care about our vote at this point because of the election season.
Thank you, Gregory. I see Kim turn on her mic.
My picture is even, like, I'm even bigger picture than that. And I think I'm just stealing an idea, Gregory, that you stated out loud when we met with the towns last week. I mean, I'm just struck by the profundity of any of these three issues on their own, never mind the way in which they feed upon each other, right? The property tax piece, of course, not only, I think about from the town budget perspective, the pressure to deal with the municipal cost and the share of county costs, and obviously the school district. And I'm just, the point I really want to make is how challenging it is for any one unit to deal with this, right? I mean, I don't know, but I feel helpless as a school board member, other than thinking about what we can control, which is the work that we're all undertaking in keeping with the budget that Heidi presented us tonight. So, I just think getting, to me, the top line message is these problems are bigger than any one board can solve, or any one municipality can solve, for that matter. And so, and when I think about the conversation that we had with our municipal colleagues last week, it's very easy for it to turn adversarial. And I don't think that was the tone and vibe at all.
No,
but the problem is we've all inherited these problems together, and we've got to figure out from a governance perspective at the state level. I've given up on the federal for now. What's the state of Maine? How is the state of Maine going to summons the leadership in order to come up with a global solution here? Because our school district can't solve it alone. Our neighboring school districts can't solve it alone. Our towns can't solve it alone.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid top line point, to use your language there. I will say, partially responded to Gregory and to you, there was an article in the Bangor Daily News I was reading today that just talked about some of the governor hopefuls, gubernatorial hopefuls, and some of their stances on property tax. And it wasn't specifically about schooling, but they sort of, each of them had some points made about it. And I will not advocate for or against any of those. This is a nonpartisan board. I'm not trying to mess with that. But it was an interesting read, and I definitely came away with thinking about like which proposals felt to me like they might actually help versus they might actually hurt. It was interesting seeing where people fell. And so I think it should be easy to find on the Bangor Daily News website if you guys are all interested. I didn't hit the paywall on it for what it's worth. So, but yeah, we'll see. But anyway, there's some, which is just to say there's some information out there about what some of because what we've seen, at least the past 8 years, right, is the governor drives so much of in the state of Maine, and the small g governor, right, not any specific one, the office of the governor drives so much of the budgeting process here. And so I think it does matter to really think about like, how are we appealing to that position, even though the legislature, works really hard passing laws. The budgetary process does seem to, at least of late, been very gubernatorial in nature. So it was just interesting to me. But I don't know. Let me put it like that. I don't know. I didn't ask that question. I've got a meeting in 2 Saturdays, so I will ask that question, Gregory, and see if that's something that we do as an organization, because I don't know. There's at least, there's way more than 4. There were 4 that I recall specifically being covered in this article, and put it like that. But there's definitely more than that. Absolutely. There we go. Yeah. So other people and other thoughts. And again, you don't have to be a committee member. This is something we're going to bring to the board anyway. So, Andy, Mary, Amy, Ryan, feel free to speak up as much as you want.
Because I think that it is a hard issue to solve, and it doesn't just solve at page costs, so you have to pay higher. And I also think that I applaud what we're doing. I mean, we're trying to work with parameters, still offer a quality, superior education for our kids. And the bottom line is that, and I think that's what we have to really keep in mind, is we do need to pay all attention to finances to do it. And I think we're really working at that, really trying. I think we're doing as good as the job as can be done given the situation. And I appreciate you, Rex, going up to that word, being on it and doing the work up there, because that is where but you know, but up there, it does, with government and drug costs, but I don't know, I just don't think that's, we got working on that angle, but this is our end point.
Yeah.
We're doing the work, and I'm going to say how you do the work. I think it's trying to live within the parameters, and that's those parameters should be paying. Right now, this is where we are. They're doing a bang up job trying to figure it out and work within the parameters, so I give credit where credit is due. And I also want to say that the idea is that education for our kids is always a priority, and we always have to keep that. I know the funding is obviously the fuel that education, but I just always.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I'm sorry, I was mumbling. I think that's a very good point. And I wanted to add actually another possibility, right? Like it's possible that our advocacy is less about changing minds in the legislature than it is about changing minds in our community, right? Maybe this is a letter to the editor that we get put in the Times Record and the Harpswell Anchor that we try to, you know, distribute locally, right? To show people, hey, listen, we know this is hard. This is what we're doing. As you can see, we don't get massive turnout to these finance committee meetings. And maybe that's a direction we want to go in with this, you know. Again, options abound. I'm just trying to lay it out. Amy.
Yeah, I will just repeat what I said last week, and maybe it's a cousin to what Mary said, is I think explaining the problem is a good role for us. Because I've been doing this for 5 years now, and it's starting to make sense of how it all works. I think people don't understand, and it's not helpful to say spend less. We're way past that. What do we take out?
Yeah.
If that's the feedback that we need.
Well, and just like we heard, right? We know what the next level of taking things out is, and it's positions, and it's positions that'll affect students. Right. Oh, sorry, Jessica.
One piece that I've been like trying to figure out this past weekend is ways to put it into perspective and how things have changed in like the broader economy or whatever we want to look at, and how we have attributed that spending to schools. And so like this is a bit of a stretch maybe, but like it's what I had to try to figure out for myself is like looking at GDP for the country and how much we spend on K through 12 education. Like a lot of us are children of the 90s kind of, and in the 90s it was 3.5%. And I think we talk about wanting, I think I remember you here saying once last week, maybe like wanting to make sure your kids have the same quality educational experience that we have now. And now the estimates for 2024 between 3.2 and 3.4. So like as a percentage, that's huge amounts of money, like massive amounts of money, 0.1% of that. And so I think that trying to figure out a way to reframe it in that our spending on education hasn't kept up with the GDP of the country. And that perspective to me kind of makes it, to me, quickly think like, well, we maybe are failing there. Like we need to spend more. And I'm not saying that's what we need to do. I'm just trying to say like, okay, how can we put this into context to understand why these numbers have gotten to where they are? So I don't know if that anybody else finds interesting, but like to me, that was like a big piece, like, wow. And your comment earlier about, you know, different avenues of what the education, if it's national security. I mean, we've talked like there's larger discussions in the country now about how much GDP should be spent on on things like that. And so, and it's still way below those numbers. So I think those perspective and context is maybe relevant to frame it up a bit.
Yeah, that's very good points. Jessica and then Kim, no, Kim. It was a fake hand. Ryan thought he saw a hand where there was no hand. So you're good, Kim.
I think we should, my point speaks to the educating the community. I think we should anticipate that as the facilities master plan process continues to gain steam and the community writ large starts to get a handle on the numbers, right? The order of magnitude that we're talking about in terms of the facilities need. I think we can anticipate a lot of anxiety, understandably, about those costs, and also conflation of the big ticket numbers associated with the facilities master plan as being confused or conflated with just the regular programmatic operational cost, which, by the way, keep me honest here, Heidi and others. I mean, I think many folks may not necessarily think about the cost associated with all the fantastic work and direction that comes into the facilities, excuse me, the daylight savings time brain, the strategic master plan, right? The community wants focus on curricular excellence, right? And so that drives the budget. Heidi stated it beautifully and eloquently earlier in terms of the connection between the strategic master plan and the way the budget is composed. But that's all on the programmatic side. Obviously, the profound amount of effort and expertise and resources that go to student mental health. I mean, I would imagine, Heidi, the effort and administrative cost associated with school safety initiatives is completely different than it was a generation ago. I mean, and whatever, I'm riffing and I too am exhausted. But we may think about like what some of those programmatic elements are, just to sort of help the community to think about why school costs what it cost. And obviously we understand that, and reminding the community that there was a real concerted effort to really think about attracting, recruiting, and maintaining truly exceptional teachers. And that was a big focus of the board's work in the earliest part of my tenure 3 or 4 years ago. So, and I'm not making the case for runaway spending. I'm making the case that this is this enterprise is going to cost some money every year. And I think, you know, and I wouldn't expect someone who's not living it day to day to necessarily appreciate, you know, what goes into the budget, right? And we'll start having these forums next week. It's for you, Hudson, and
Day after tomorrow.
and yeah, right, day after tomorrow, and you know, and we'll have some great participation, but the rooms will probably not be packed. I would love it if that is. I would love to be proven wrong on that point. And so, in some sense, letter has the effect of not only providing another forum to present some of the information that will be presented at the actual fora, but also then to tie it to the fact that the reason why so much pressure is on the tax base is because of some of the
background,
the dynamics that are going on in these reports that you shared.
Do you think that our community has supported education and will continue to support education, and the fact that all the towns want an elementary school, you know, there's consolidation which saves money, but we heard to keep the elementary schools to spend the money because it serves such an important value for every community. And so I think we can go to all these communities and just know that we're here And we heard that you want to support education and to have your own schools.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would add to it, the level, anything short of radical consolidation doesn't even save that much, as we saw, right? We saw a spread of like 10 or $11 million between all the plans that were being discussed. None of those plans discussed, one elementary school for the whole district, for example, which, to be clear, I am not saying we should do, but just like the amount of consolidation necessary to truly save costs is radical. And we're not even, our most radical options didn't even go that far. So yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. So oh yeah, please, Andy.
What I'm hearing is that we need to take credit for the things that we're asking the administration to do, what the board set, a charge of as well to do. There's a lot of good things that have been happening, strategic plan, master plan, and even implementing those things. Heidi's already, hitting the ground running with implementing the strategic plan. So the first slide that I saw tonight, or second, was in the beginning, was the success stories. There's some data on, how well we're doing in academics. And I think that's important to keep highlighting that, to make sure we're telling the community this is the cost of, this is what the budget impacts are if you want, these outcomes. So if we keep talking about the desired outcomes, I think it's going to be important for the community to keep hearing that.
That's a really good point. A really good point. And actually, speaking of those numbers, right, Andy and I just finished writing the Bodenham Town Report letter. I was telling Jessica, and we were comparing we sort of did a little part of the NOEA data on our student achievements. And our student achievement, this is district-wide, our percentage above, our average as a district, percentage above state averages went up. It was over state averages last year, or the 2 years ago, and it went up last year. So we're trending in a very positive direction. And it's amazing how it's in some ways, when you look at those charts, it's a battle of inches. They go from 68.7 to 69.1. But like those differences add up, and they really do show a lot of effort.
Yeah, just to follow on that, we had the Bowdoin Town meeting over the weekend, and that question came up by the public. And I was able to say, thanks to Heidi's presentation last week, that in fact, some of those data points are trending upward. So people do like to hear that, and I was happy to pass that on.
Yeah, it's good. We have a lot to celebrate, to your point, Andy. I think that's exactly right. So, absent any other hands going up, Kim.
Back to an earlier exchange you and Gregory had about writing a letter, and is that the best thing to do? I wonder if it makes sense for our board to write a letter. I'm not sure to whom it's being directed, but maybe it's an open letter about this is what we see, this is what feels really hard right now. And then I wonder if we might take that letter and just use it as a mechanism to open up some conversations with the requisite chairs and, committee folk in Augusta, with our own representatives.
That is basically exactly where I was going to go. So yeah, what I'm hearing, if you don't mind me recapping,
Please.
is that I've taken some notes on what people have said. I think they're all fairly consistent. What I'm hearing in brief, without reading everyone's notes, is we want to celebrate the work that we're doing. We want to present the scope of the problem that every district in the state of Maine, let's rephrase that the state of Maine is facing, right? We are all in it together. We are facing this problem of property taxes being unable to support the cost of education, the real cost of education, which we, as a finance committee, but I think as a board, I think we are actually a pretty well-educated board. We get a lot of great data from our administrations, particularly the two of you and Amanda, about the top-level stuff. Our principals report to us regularly. So I think, broadly speaking, we were a well-educated board, and if we don't have all the numbers memorized, we can get them really easily. We can look in our board agendas and find them. So I think that's good, right? So we have an appreciation of the problem that we see. We have appreciation for the work that we're doing. Like Andy said, the work we've charged our administration with doing with strategic planning and master planning, and we're living in those results. And so here's what's coming up, right? Here's the decisions. Here's what we're hearing from our communities now. Here's the thing, here's the way costs are trending, here's what it takes. And we should all, be both proud and we should be thinking about how to help understand the costs of the future without getting too prescriptive about fix this, fix that, just understanding what's coming. You took the words out of my mouth, Kim, regarding an open letter. I think the real answer is we write a letter to our community, but we write it as an open letter so we can repurpose it in a lot of ways. And I think our community is broad. But if we think about it as it's a letter to MSAD75 as our starting point, that's probably going to be the most useful. So that's a good question. I mean, my off the dome op-ed in the Times Record, we got the crier. We talked to, if only we had an insight on the Harpswell Anchor. Start with that, right? Start with Parent Square, right? For the direct school community, which doesn't go everywhere. I think we maybe, historically, the chair writes a letter with the superintendent to introduce the budget. I don't know if this supplants that, but maybe this supplements that, right? There's a letter introducing this specific budget. Maybe with that mailing that gets sent out to everybody in the district, there's this other letter that the board wants to share, looking ahead, and you give it a title. Who knows? Like, those are just some ideas. Amy.
Did you say, Heidi, that you're putting out a state of the schools document? I mean, it could be an extra cover letter maybe for that. Or...
So the short answer, I think there's a lot of opportunities, Frank, that we can sort of consider. And maybe that's something we talk about as a board when we have the letter, right? Maybe we come in and we can even, ask our chair to come up with a list of ideas he can present to us. But so anyway, that's sort of what I'm taking away based on the conversation, the notes that I have.
I'm back on substance, sorry.
I love it. No.
Backwards. MSMA, that's you. No, you're
MSDA.
Sorry. You all have been spending some time working with all these three reports. Is this some sort of interesting confluence of like all these things happening at the same time?
That's my attitude. I look at this and it's sort of fascinating to me that this is all, it's not surprising because I think many stakeholders in the state recognize the property tax issue,
right,
recognize the school funding issue.
Different symptoms of the same problem.
Exactly. But I do think it's interesting that within, a handful of weeks, essentially, these three major reports all came out. I do find that.
So I wonder if the lead, if you will, is like, we're going to tell the story of these three reports from MSAD75's perspective. We've just done a strategic plan. We are very deep along we're far enough along in our facilities master plan to begin getting real concrete about cost and funding. And we want to contextualize for you the problems identified in these three reports as they appear to the 14 of us.
Yeah, I think that's a good framework. If nothing else, it's a great starting point. So what I would recommend to this committee, and we've got some guests who can weigh in from the board at large, but that we charge Ryan with my assistance, I would volunteer at least, to help turn this into something we can review. And to bring that to the board to review. And maybe we have a lot of feedback, maybe we don't have a lot of feedback, but sort of like move it to the next level through that writing process would be my pitch. And then we sort of see, is the board ready to approve it on March 26th? If not, is it ready to approve it in April? And just start making progress towards it. What do you guys say to that approach? That seem reasonable? All right. So I will volunteer to work with Ryan on that coming up and see what we can end up with.
Block, I don't mind helping.
I will absolutely, and committee members, feel free to, I would say anyone who's present, but given this is starting with the finance committee, I'm going to prioritize committee members. Shoot me emails if you have thoughts. Hey, I want you to make sure you include this, or don't forget about that. And obviously, work with Ryan. We'll try to assemble something that's readable. But I welcome. I think I'll speak for Ryan. Hopefully he doesn't mind, but I think we will welcome all those opportunities for input to bring something that we want to represent us all. And that may not be a perfect fit for each 14 of us, right? But I think we can all end in a place where directionally we're on board and we're seeing the facts and can feel really comfortable with that as a start. Cool. It's been a long night. It's daylight savings. Thank you all very much. See you on Wednesday at Harpswell. Remember, Harpswell is a little bit of a further drive for most of you, so leave enough time for driving. And it's at 6:30. It's at the school at Harpswell. It'll be in one of the classrooms we usually do it in, I believe, right? One of the classrooms in the main wing. Yeah, it's at 6:30. There will be signs, and then we'll see everybody again on Thursday for our workshop. Thank you all.